And welcome back, everyone, to One on One with Nate and Aziz, hashtag Triple O Show. First off, I got to congratulate you, man. You had a great 41-point game the other night.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
The ACL looks good. You're just dunking on everybody, man. How's it feel to be back?
It feels nice. It feels good to, officially be recognized. People like to say that the process is still in order, but man, we've arrived, bro. The process is done. Just look for more.
Right. Well, the NBA season is back. I know we did our pre-season kind of expectations and predictions, but now the season is actually here, man.
Yeah. No, it always comes up quicker than, we talked about that on the last show, quicker than we expected, and we need to slow down a little bit because we're already 10, 12 games in.
Right.
The start of the season has flown by, and a lot has certainly happened, so good to catch up with you.
Definitely, with the start of the season, even though it's only been, 12 games in, you always get the great quotes like, if the playoffs started today, but they don't.
The way too early predictions usually happen the previous season. And, we had some expectations, I think, going into this season, but there's been some surprises as well, some adjustments and a lot of changes that have happened. So if we were to cut the playoffs and start them today, then I couldn't tell you what would happen.
Right.
There's so much happening.
With all the new things coming to the season, though, the one constant is Golden State is good.
They're a good basketball club. Yeah. I think they take their time and they find little opportunities to remind us because they want to give us the benefit of the doubt that we're just, we're going to remember that.
For sure. I think it's interesting with a team like that, 4 straight finals, 3 championships. Yeah, it seems like last year maybe there was a little lackadaisicalness going into the season because it's like, hey, we know we're good. We're going to be in the Western Conference Finals. What are we playing for? But it really seems like this year that they came out with a new sense of motivation for the season. And that boy Steph has been on fire, man.
Yeah, the whole club. The shooting is just, it's going to continue to shock us, I think, every season. Because these guys are looking at their own individual records, right? They're just, that's the motivation and that's the challenges amongst team members. And really, while they still need to put the league back on notice, I'm just really astonished by the level of encouragement and even support when it comes to really trying to meet those challenges individually.
Right.
You don't see that amongst teams because they're so concerned about the team success, but that squad is just willing to give anybody the floor every night. So
For sure.
Steph is.
And I didn't think we were going to see this stuff. That was one of my gripes, aside from being a Thunder fan and Durant leaving, was that we were never going to get to see that two-time MVP Steph again as long as Durant was there. And lo and behold, like I said, it's early in the season, but we're still getting that. Right now, I think it's averaging 29.5 points, 51% from the field. And the pace of play, which was, the word of the day on the last podcast, it just tailors a team like that. Durant is averaging 10.5 3-point shots. Not shots, 3-point attempts per game and shooting 49%. Like, that's...
It's insane. And that's the luxury you get with having, so much talent, shooting talent in particular, but also when it comes to the structure of their offense and their defense. Those guys are just so fluid. There is never a moment where, even if there's a breakdown in a play, there's a quick reaction that always happens. I'm always really keen on the new guys in the rotation. We've seen somebody like Damon Jones,
Alfonso McKinney.
He's right. He's just shooting.
Right.
He does not care. And again, that is the flexibility and the luxury of playing on a team like that. Is you're only meeting your highest potential if everyone is in that headspace. Right. And so it is really eye-opening. What I think could be driving a little bit of that is the potential for that team to be, separating at the end of this year. They may want to just have their best year ever, but
Go out on top.
yeah, why not? That's really something you have to do as a champion, is find ways to challenge yourself every year.
For sure. So we know the Warriors are a constant. What's another player team that's really surprised you so far at this beginning of the season?
Well, you had mentioned the Sacramento Kings, who have certainly had a nice, very nice turnaround to the start of their season.
7-5.
Yeah, look, dude, I was saying this during our preseason preview. De'Aaron Fox is a different player this year.
Yes.
He's much more confident in himself. That his shot making and shot taking, and decision making, in the fluidity of the game has just really come up another level. He's a great athlete, severely underrated athlete, but he seems like he's now ready to lead a young team to where
he seems like he took that next level, and whatever it was he did to work out over the summer, he understood that I'm going to be a leader on this team now, and I need these guys to get behind me, and I can do that by improving my play. I've really been impressed with him as well. We'll talk about some other stuff about De'Aaron Fox later, but as well, Buddy Hield's looked really well.
Buddy is. Yeah.
And I got to say,
What do you
Willie
think about-
Cauley-Stein, I don't think he'll be on the Kings next year, but whatever team because he's going to get paid. Like, I saw him, I think it was the first or second game of the season against Rudy Gobert, and I didn't even know who he was. He looked like a completely different player. He had some post moves, the fluidity that he was moving with. Because prior this year, he looked like your typical run and jump kind of center in a mold of a DeAndre Jordan.
JaVale McGee.
And what I saw from him that game and a few games this year is, he's got a lot more to his game. So I am really excited, not only for this year, but next year to see. I think he's going to be like a sleeper piece to a team, a contending team.
I could certainly see that. With the absence of, you lost to Marcus those years ago, your inside presence is taking a little bit of a hit. You'll see, I'm hoping to see more guys like Willie Cauley and some other kind of just, raw bigs still continuing to develop. Even if it takes 5-6 years, you look at a guy like JaVale McGee, who we'll talk about the Lakers a little bit and the great season he's having. There's still different ways to mold your game over time, right? And so I certainly think Kings, they don't have much to lose this season, so they're going to be putting a lot of development time and still making a good push, I think, for the upcoming year.
I think the pace of play as well, as we always keep saying, has benefits a team like that.
Yeah.
So you've got De'Aaron Fox, running up and down the court. You've got spacers on the floor and Hield and Bjelica, and then all your bigs are pretty much mobile aside from Kosta Koufos. But you got Cauley-Stein, Scal, Bagley, Giles. So they're just they're built for today's NBA.
Yeah. And I'll keep an eye on Bagley. I put him in my top rookie rankings. And given kind of the they have a few guys who are trying to fill in that position.
Yeah.
So he may not see the floor as often as I might expect, but they have a lot of young talent, so more to come. What do you think about some of the teams we saw last year that they had made some changes? I'm thinking about my Chicago Bulls, right?
Let's talk about it.
Yeah. Look, I'll throw my first surprise in there, and then I'll talk about my disappointment.
Okay.
Zach LaVine has been an offensive, I want to say, master this season. He has not. He hasn't been a master. He's been a spark plug. He's definitely been more driven to be the number one option when it comes to scoring. And so we're seeing him average 27 points over the course of these 11 games. If we don't see that scoring output coming from a guy like Jabari Parker, then I only see his scoring averages maybe bumping up a little bit.
Right. I agree as well. We saw flashes of this when he was in Minnesota, but now that he's kind of been handed the keys to the team, in the same way with De'Aaron Fox, it seems like he's asserted himself like, hey, you guys can depend on me to be this go-to scorer as well as playmaker. Like I said, I still have belief in your Bulls, but not until Markkanen comes
Markkanen
back.
has to come back.
I think that's a big dynamic that'll change everything and kind of get more structure to the team when he gets there.
Exactly. It'll give us more of a, like you said, an offensive identity wherein we have inside-outside presence, but also in those moments where you really do need to find, say, you need to have options, right? So you can't go to the driving game or even the mid-range game often. We'll have a strong driving kick offensive set too. So, I can't give Zach LaVine the confirmation that he'll keep up this scoring pace over the course of the season, because we will see some guys come back and take that away a bit.
Right.
But yeah, he's been a nice surprise thus far, especially given the kind of the lackadaisical play of a Mr. Jabari Parker.
There's still time. Well, I'll say he's playing better than Carmelo, but that's not saying too much.
Well, hey, right. I wouldn't want to keep that comparison too strong. But yeah, we'll see if some young guys who have made some changes to different teams can kind of get out of that rut. One of my surprises has been DeMar DeRozan, having made a massive shift to an organization like San Antonio, where you're not going in there with a red carpet.
Yeah.
You're coming into their house, you're coming into their domain, and to fit in as well and as quickly as he has, and even to be proactive in being the number one option. I'm very surprised by that. I thought he'd struggle a little bit.
I'm surprised as well. I didn't know he was capable of being a playmaker. That, we've seen some games with him having a high number of assists, especially for, a two guard that mostly shoots mid-range jump shots. And that's really been the biggest surprise to me about his game, was that he's being able to be put in this role where he's still the dominant scorer that he's always been, but he's also able to create for his teammates, which just makes him even more dangerous. That was one of the things for me when people were talking about, playoff seasons going into this season, and everybody was counting the Spurs out. And I'm like, hey, they made the playoffs last year, and Leonard didn't play.
Yeah. Played
8 games, and albeit DeRozan's not as great as player as Kawhi Leonard, but he's still a pretty damn good player. So to count them out and just to see how he's been able to get off to a great start this season has been really good to see.
And to his benefit, I think his leadership capabilities right now are being tested, given your depth from your injuries is really limiting that point guard position. So I'm hoping to see some strength in him continue as well. Speaking of guys that are playing, this is my last surprise. And I'll throw 2 of these in here, because these are 2 guys that are really have been playing more and more out of their position over the years. Number 1 being Blake Griffin. Blake has, turned into that prototypical point forward, showing a lot of versatility and like you said, offensive playmaking that we hadn't seen in his Clipper days. So, he's averaging close to 26 points a game, had a 50-point outburst at the start of the season. And also Robin Lopez. I'm just going to throw him in there. The guy, I can't recall his rankings right now, or his three-point shooting percentage, but I know he has made a massive leap from last year.
Brook Lopez.
I'm sorry.
I know you want your Chicago guys.
Yes, I always got the Bulls on the mind.
Not the one fighting the mascots.
Exactly. Brook Lopez for the Milwaukee Bucks has been a tremendous outside presence this year, which is strange. Even seeing him toss that up from far is
like you said, he's really adapted. It was funny because I was watching a Bucks game, and they had put a stat up, and it had I misread it, but I think it was pretty understandable, because if you would have seen it, and I'll probably put a picture up or something of it, but it said that Brook Lopez had made 245 threes of 247 over the past 2 years.
What?
And so I was like, that doesn't sound right. I'm like, how is he the greatest 3-point shooter of all time? But then when I went back and looked at it, what they were saying was that of the 247 threes he's made in his career, 245 will come in the past 2 years.
Okay.
So I'm like, okay.
That's still telling.
Yeah, it's still a lot, but that's the difference between missing 3 threes and I'm
Yeah.
like, how is he better than Steph? How I
Right.
haven't heard of this, but. To your
That's
point,
funny.
he's really adapted his game to today's NBA. He's worked on his shot, become a three-point shooter, but he's still able to, play on the post, get rebounds, and I would definitely agree. He fits today's NBA when you would look at him and think other guys of his size have fell behind.
And that's something pretty interesting, and we'll probably talk about that in another segment, but just about the trends and how guys develop their games over the years. I think we're seeing a bit more of a different trend, thinking about guys like a Kobe, a Vince Carter, where the mid-range and that post footwork and that capability really comes into play. These guys are now just shooting the three ball, so it's pretty interesting. Who else did you have for your best player starts of the season? We certainly had some MVPs in mind, but
Giannis Antetokounmpo, and that system that Mike Budenholzer is running, I love it. It just and it's funny because it showed you how much a system dictates success of players, because essentially they have the same exact team as last year, but you switch out Jason Kidd, and then I can't remember who filled in for him, but it didn't really matter. But you bring in a whole entire different coach that's running a different system, and you just see the success that they're flourishing with. I believe they're 9-2 right now with some big wins over the Raptors. I think they beat the Celtics. The other night they beat the Warriors as well.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
and it just looks like Giannis, although he's somewhat trying to adapt to the new pace of play, he's shooting a couple threes here and there. He's still dominant. He can't be stopped getting to the rim, as well as still putting up big rebound numbers. So Giannis is just Giannis.
Giannis is Giannis, man. And I sometimes when I see him do what he does out there, I oftentimes think back to 10 years ago and wondering why LeBron didn't just dunk every time. But he's a different kind of animal. Once he's determined to go to the basket, there's probably one thing you can do, which is get dunked on.
Yes.
So yeah, I'm really surprised with. I'm not necessarily surprised with Milwaukee. I'm happy to see them be this efficient. We were expecting this, I'd say, a couple years ago, given the roster and the pace of development. You could see Giannis coming, but I certainly expect them to stay competitive at the top of the East this year, along with Toronto, who has been another. I would just put my hands up in the air when it came to how they would initially start, as well as the Spurs. I was going to give them both time, but like we talked about with DeRozan, Kawhi has just filled in perfectly. He hasn't missed a beat, even regardless of who he's playing with or what team he's on. His capabilities have not dwindled. And so that's really encouraging for them to, again, kind of lead that Eastern push, being competitive with Philly and Boston.
Yeah, one of my surprises with them is that how well they play when Kawhi sits out. Like that's
'Cause he's missed some games.
Yeah, and just for rest, not even for injury purposes, but just to see that it's like they don't miss a beat. I believe Ibaka came out the other night, was like 11 for 11 or something crazy like that, and it's like,
who I like on that team is Siakam.
Pascal.
Pascal. They have some really just energized guys on the floor at all times. And Kyle Lowry, look, I've never really deemed him as a true point guard, but I think he's he's in the top 5 or 6 in assists per game.
He's leading the league in assists.
Is he leading the league? Okay,
Yeah.
I mean the guy can pass the ball, and they have shooters, drivers, defensive playmakers. So I really am gonna give Toronto a gold star for their early season push.
For sure. It's to me with Toronto, while their bench might not be as talented as a Boston, the continuity between them is far greater, and that's probably to not having as much talent. There doesn't have to be as much decision about
This is what this person does. Everybody kind of has a universal purpose.
Everyone knows their role and is happy to fill it. So I agree to your point. And with Siakam, it seems like he's kind of where we thought OG Anunoby was gonna take that leap. It seems like Siakam's kind of overtook him as of right now, but I still expect him to be a good player.
Yeah, they still have some guys who can, step their game up even by mid-season.
So one last surprise, and I gotta give him some props because I definitely dogged him in the summer league edition of this. Alonzo Trier, man, like, good for you. He's been out there getting buckets off the bench, and I gotta say I'm impressed because, as I said, when I saw him at summer league, he just looked like he didn't know what his place was, and didn't really adjust. Looks like he was still trying to play like he was in high school,
right? And
the game has changed, but whatever he's doing, it's been working.
Okay, I guess we can kind of close on that. What would you say then is, and it may not be one thing, it could be a multitude of things, but what brings a guy from that stage to where, say, Alonzo has been playing now? Is it just time on the floor? Is it the coaching? Is it the player having that self-doubt themselves? Is it the rotation?
I don't think there's any doubt in that kid's mind.
Okay. Yeah.
that for sure. But as with a lot of players, if you make it to the NBA, even if you don't have great numbers, you've got to be talented.
Yeah.
I was watching ESPN the other day on the show, and they made a point that with the Bills quarterback Nathan Peterman, who every time he goes out, it seems like he throws 3 interceptions. And they were just like how bad he is, but they were like, you don't understand. Like, to suck in the NFL, you still got to suck at any professional athlete or sport. You still got to be really great to even do that. So imagine what the other options are, So that's how I kind of look in Trier's case, where it's like, it's not that he was bad. Everybody in NBA is talented in some facet, but everybody doesn't have that opportunity. So I think the opportunity to get those minutes on the floor, as well as the coaching, because the coaches have to have confidence in their players to know that, okay, he may be a little trigger happy, so we're going to put him in a certain situation coming off the bench where he can take these shots with people on the floor that, like a Lance Thomas, that'll be, I don't know if they still have Kyle O'Quinn, but be around players that more complement him.
Right. Yeah, I can see that. I think you're hitting the nail on the head in that it starts obviously from the player development side. As much raw talent as you may have, you got to be put on the floor and given an opportunity. And hey, again, I always got my Bulls on the brain. That's why Tom Thibodeau screwed up so many of our players. It's just because if you can't have confidence in a guy, eventually he'll lose it in himself too.
He hates young guys.
Well, hey, to all you young fellas out there, head to the gym, keep working on your shot. You
Stay away from Thibodeau.
Yeah, Thibodeau don't love you, man.
All right. When we come back, we're going to discuss some of our disappointments so far this season, so stay tuned.